Lord, make us instruments of your peace.
Where there is hatred, let us sow love.
Where there is injury, pardon.
Where there is doubt,
Faith. Where there is despair, hope.
Where there is darkness,
light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master,
grant that we may not so much seek
to be consoled as to console,
to be understood as to understand,
to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive,
it is in pardoning that we are pardoned,
and it is in dying
that we are born to eternal life.
Amen.
WESN.
Here is the WSN News on the Hour. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 5 malaria cases reported in South Trinidad. No bail for man accused of beheading Superior woman. Bandits attack near Pier 1, Chaguaramas, 4 robbed. Internationally, U.S. stocks plunge minutes into trading day as tariffs slam global markets. Now for the details. The Ministry of Health says it is currently investigating a cluster of malaria cases in South Trinidad. As of April 2nd, 2025, 5 cases have been confirmed, including the primary source, which brings the total number of cases for 2025 to 5, as there were no other confirmed cases for 2025, the ministry said in a release Wednesday. The release noted that Trinidad and Tobago is not endemic for malaria, and as such, the majority of cases confirmed each year are imported and/or introduced. Over the period of 2015 to 2024, there have been 153 confirmed cases, which is an average of 15 cases per year, the ministry reported. The release further reported that the 5 cases are in a well-defined geographic area, and the following fieldwork has been conducted by the Insect Vector Control Division after the identification of the first case on March 27th. 2 bandits robbed 4 people of thousands of dollars worth of cell phones and cash early Wednesday morning near Pier 1, Chaguaramas. The 4 victims reported to Carenage police that around 2 a.m. they were walking west along the Western Main Road, Carenage, when they passed 2 men who were sitting just off a pathway. As they continued walking, one of the men walked in front of them, withdrew a gun, and announced a robbery. The 2 then ordered the 4 to lie on the ground, following which they began to rob them of their possessions. 3 of the victims were robbed of their iPhone cell phone, which altogether were valued at $21,000, while one of the victims had his wallet containing $1,500 TT plus $150 US. The bandits, after robbing the 4, fled the scene on foot while the victims made their way to the Carenage police station, where they made the report. The 44-year-old unemployed man charged with the murder of Joan Eastick, whose head was found in a cooler in Superior last month, has faced a master in the High Court on April 2nd. Michael Jr. Randy Edwards, also known as Eddie, appeared virtually in South Court A. The master denied him bail and remanded him into police custody. A status hearing was set for October 6th. Internationally, U.S. stocks plunged at the opening bell Thursday after President Donald Trump rocked global markets by announcing tariffs on almost all imports into the country. The S&P 500 tumbled more than 4%, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 3.7% or 1,700 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq sold off by nearly 5%. Those market swings wiped out trillions of dollars of value in the first few minutes of trading. Retail stocks were among some of the hardest hit as Trump's tariffs on major manufacturing and exporting nations, such as China, could reach as high as 54%. Lululemon plummeted 10%, Nike dropped 11%, and Ralph Lauren declined around 11.5%. Small businesses are also set to be hit hard by the tariffs. The Russell 2000 index, which makes up the smaller publicly traded companies, was down 4%. It has now lost nearly 20% since its peak in November. Well, that's the news on the hour on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish.
And I am Jada McLeod.
And it is so good to be back here with Jada. Jada and I are back for just some time. And we're ready to bring you all the latest news, latest discussions, insightful interviews, and all of this to start your morning here with us. So thank you for joining us, those who are tuned in. So this morning we're starting with a little advocacy with the Hindu Women's Organization. They are backed by the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, I hope I didn't butcher that, and other Hindu organizations. They have been advocating for changes to the Hindu Marriage Act to include a woman's occupation on marriage certificates. This move seeks to address what many see as an outdated and discriminatory omission that does not apply to Christian or secular marriages, with the Attorney General referring the matter to the Law Reform Commission for review. Discussions on equality in legal documentation have gained renewed attention. So joining us this morning to discuss this issue is Attorney Olala, who has been involved in this advocacy effort and has highlighted the broader implications of this change. Good morning, Mr. Lala.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Mr. Lala, to jump straight into it, can you just explain to us how the omission of a woman's occupation from Hindu marriage certificates came about and why it has remained unaddressed for so long?
Well, you have to understand that a lot of our historical past from colonialism did not treat with matters with the level of equality that it ought to be treated. So these are one of the documents that has been inherited over a long period of time. And this omission has been raised on several occasions by various organizations, but for whatever reason, it has not been addressed. We were fortunate to have Minister Sagram Singh paying attention to it and treating it with a certain degree of urgency. And that's how the Attorney General has referred the matter to the Law Reform Commission for review. So there are a lot of documents and a lot of registers and other parts of our history that still reflect our colonial past. So while these may to some seem insignificant to have a profession included on a certificate, it is important in that is a historical past where women were discriminated in terms of what they could or could not do. And although it is 2025 and we recently celebrated International Women's Day, it still is a landmark achievement for the Hindu Women's Organization, because what it does is the wider picture of women fighting and ensuring that there's equality in every aspect of life. And this is just an example of many other issues, and it applies to all women really just standing up, identifying where there may be acts of discrimination or where there may be any kind of equality that exists, highlighting it and addressing it. That allows more awareness to take place in the society and among individuals who may not recognize the importance of non-discrimination.
How exactly has not having the occupation listed on the marriage certificate affected Hindu women? Not the most modern women, but back in the day, because I know I read that they said that it's not really going to affect persons who've been married a couple of years already. But how is it going to affect them?
Well, let's put it this way. If a Hindu woman were to get married today, and she's a teacher, nurse, lawyer, doctor, engineer, she's not entitled to put her profession on it. She's not entitled to put her job. If she works as a news anchor, she can't put that on it. Whereas a husband can put his name on it. And on the Christian marriage certificate, a Christian woman can put her occupation, her job. So as of today, no Hindu woman or Muslim woman is entitled to put their occupation. So for a young woman's point of view, you go to school, you have a job, you are very proud of what you've done, what you've achieved, you're not entitled to put it. Now, is that right or is that wrong? Obviously, it's wrong. And it's something that it seems to be a very simple omission, but you see the effort that has to go through to even have these matters addressed. This matter has been addressed or raised several times. It now has to go before a law reform commission. It has to be reviewed by Attorney General. Decisions have to be made before you can even make a change like this. So it may appear simple, but there's a long process that has to go through to achieve it.
Right. So seeing as this issue was referred to the Law Reform Commission, what does this process entail, and how soon can we expect a resolution?
Well, how it works is that in order to change any law or any form or anything that is part of our legislation, it has to go before a committee called the Law Reform Commission, which would examine it, look and see whether there's merit in creating the change and how they go about making the change, whether it will cause any impact, whether it will have any negative effects, whether it could be subject to litigation, or whether it could be easily done or not. So it's really up to the Attorney General's office and the Law Reform Commission to decide how quickly they can deal with it. It's not a matter that I would imagine could cause any upstir or any legal complications, but we hope it could be done as quickly as possible.
So, Mr. Lala, we've seen the change happen to the Christian community. Why was the Hindu community so slow to change? Why is this something? I know you would have kind of sort of touched on it before, but in terms of the comparison, why is Christian women move forward and not Hindu women?
Well, it didn't move forward. The British legislators included it, and when we got independence, we inherited it. So it was part of the legislation that was created by the British. It was never omitted from the Christian Women's Certificate, but it was deliberately omitted from the Hindu Women's. And that is why it has been raised. It's been raised from time to time, but it's not been addressed. For whatever reason, previous Attorney Generals did not address it. It's not been addressed. So fortunately, again, we're grateful that Minister Sagram Singh took the initiative to treat with us, to take a very proactive approach with it and address the matter. So again, it's all part of our history.
So it's a process that's happening. So this seems like a very classic case of a traditional versus a modern type of issue. So are there any bodies at all, or any major persons, any major voices that may be fighting against this? Have you received any pushback?
Well, no, we have not gotten any pushback. I think it's there was consultation with over 15 or close to 20 organizations in the Hindu community who all agreed and had full support of the move. So it's not a matter that I think could get any pushback. And I say it's a broader issue because it deals with women generally.
Yes.
There's still acts of discrimination against women in many different ways. And this is just one example. So it's symbolic in a very large part in terms of ensuring that there's always equality and that if something's identified, it's addressed and not left sleeping.
All right.
You would have mentioned litigation. Was it a surprise? Because I understand that this issue did not require litigation. So based on the SDMS's history of legal action in similar cases, was that a surprise to all of you?
Well, I think the SDMS position was they are very keen to have this matter addressed. The lawyer, I think Kyle Taklal Singh, wrote in 2020, if I get it correct, raising the same issue and possibly threatening litigation. It may not have reached the courts, but it's all trying to seek the same result. If it can be done without confrontation, all the better. We see a lot of matters that are filed against the state that can easily be addressed, and very often it reaches all the way to the Privy Council, costs the states millions of dollars, when it could be very easily hashed out, addressed. People could sit around a table and negotiate or find resolution to matters, but we become very litigious, especially the state takes a position in a lot of their matters to fight regardless of what And again, it costs time, it costs the taxpayers a lot of money when matters could be otherwise addressed. So this is, again, I don't see it as an issue where anybody could really raise complaint about it, because it only benefits not only Hindu women, but all women, that they feel that sense of equality.
Yeah, well, this omission was also reported, well, it reportedly applies to Muslim marriages. Has any concerns been raised, if you know, by the Muslim community for this change with regard to them?
I'm unaware of any concerns raised, and if it is, I mean, it would go through their lawyers, and they may, now that this is in the forefront, they may themselves raise the concerns and have it addressed. And I suspect the Law Reform Commission will take it into account also in reviewing the Muslim Marriage Act to see whether or not that form needs to be addressed and amended.
Okay, so how does this very significant change set the stage for women's empowerment going forward? Not just for Hindu women, but women in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I mean, we've seen a history globally of women being discriminated, the discrimination becoming less and less as we become more advanced. But what it does, it reminds women that if there's an issue, it's important to stand up for the issue, however important or insignificant it may be, because it affects not only one but others.
Yes.
And it creates awareness that there must be equality of treatment of all individuals. So matters like this, it's a reminder that if there are wrongs being perpetrated in one way or another, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's employment, whether it's salary, whether it's sexual discrimination, it ought to be ventilated and addressed. Because if you're not vigilant, then just one person being discriminated is one person too much.
Indeed, indeed.
Mr. Lala, do you believe that this change could set a precedent for addressing other legal inequalities in Trinidad and Tobago? So not just with regard to women, but just inequalities on the whole, as it pertains to men, women, different religious backgrounds, different groups. Does that set a tone?
It should, because if people are discriminated and they know there's recourse and they see there's recourse, it gives them the sense of hope that they can have it addressed. The worst thing is to be taken advantage of, discriminated or wrongly treated in whatever way, whether it's by the police, employers, by the state, and have no redress, and also think that there's no option available to you. So it is always making people aware that they have rights, they can address it, that the system will facilitate it being addressed, so that the goal should always be to maintain equality of treatment of all individuals, not necessarily by race, religion, but across the board and wherever. That's why you see a lot of matters being filed called constitutional motions before the court, where there's any kind of inequality taking place, our constitution allows you to seek redress of the court. So it's always being vigilant with these matters to ensure that our democracy works and that all individuals feel that sense of equality.
Do you think that addressing legal inequalities, I mean, in Trinidad and Tobago, is that something that is common, or is it an easy process? So for the regular Jane and John watching the program this morning, you know, is it something that they can go forth and if they have issues that they would like addressed, is the issue addressing in Trinidad and Tobago simple?
It is not completely simple, but it's available, and there are a lot of matters that are filed before the courts. There's Equal Opportunities Commission. A lot of people from top to bottom access the courts where there's discrimination, where there are acts against them. Very often people aren't aware of all their rights that are available.
Yes.
But certainly we are a country that's somewhat litigious, and the courts are very open and liberal in the way in which they treat with matters. So the important thing is to have access, to know that it exists, and also have a system that facilitates change. And we're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated. So that redounds to the benefit of all citizens of the country.
Yes, I would agree with that as well. I wanted to ask, and this may be a bit blunt, so forgive me for that, but why do you in particular, Kay, why does it require a specific set of expertise?
Well, I care about all human rights. I do a lot of human rights matters that go across the board, from migrants to people who are arrested illegally, detained, who are abused by the police. So any sort of right to me that affects individuals is important. So throughout my career, I have done multiple cases involving either discrimination or human rights violations. And it is about identifying issues that need to be addressed and taking the bull by the horns and dealing with it. And that's the role and responsibility of all lawyers. You have a responsibility that if you are able to treat with something and address it and fix it and create change, that is one of your responsibilities as a lawyer.
So what's next? What's next for this particular issue, and how do we wrap this up very, very nicely?
Well, the goal is, like I say, the minister has been very cooperative and they've moved swiftly compared to the delays in the past, and we hope in the very near future it could be addressed very easily and this matter put to rest. And hopefully other issues of a similar nature would be treated in a similar fashion and quickly addressed, so we could move on as a developing country to ensure that there are no inequalities and that there's an openness in terms of addressing it and ensuring that all people feel that sense of equality in all aspects of their life.
I think we just to reiterate, this issue, once implemented, it does not affect past marriages. So it's not to say Hindu women who have been married before, their marriage certificates will change. It will address future marriages to come, correct?
Correct, because one of the difficulties is going retroactively becomes very complicated. So again, it can change from now or whenever the legislators change it moving forward. So all young people now will benefit. And at the end of the day, if you see something wrong, it's addressing it, fixing it, and moving on. Kicking it under the carpet is unacceptable. So that's what this addresses. We see something wrong, we identify it, we fix it, and we move on.
Yes. Addressing it, fixing it, and moving on.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Lala, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. We do have a better, clearer understanding of what is happening with the Hindu community at this current moment, and we wish you all the best moving forward, and that this issue is resolved, it's implemented, and the Hindu women, the Hindu community of Trinidad and Tobago is satisfied with the end result.
Thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Okay, so we're going to go on, take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to carry on with our conversations this morning. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say, we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
And welcome back to the program this morning. We're jumping straight into our second discussion. A little bit on the political landscape in Trinidad and Tobago as it continues to shift as more candidates step forward ahead of the upcoming general elections. And among them is Ms. Marsha Walker, a former temporary opposition senator and ex-UNC member, who has now joined the National Transformation Alliance to contest the Digger Martin West seat. Walker, who previously ran for local government elections in 2023 under the UNC, has made the bold move to align with the NTA, signaling what the party calls a growing movement for bold leadership and national progress. So joining us this morning is Ms. Marsha Walker to discuss her decision to contest Digger Martin West, her vision for the constituency, and what she believes the NTA offers as an alternative to traditional party politics. Good morning, Ms. Walker.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, Ms. Walker, seeing as you previously ran in the local government elections under the United National Congress and even served as a temporary opposition senator, what led...
I also ran in the general election, the last general election.
Right. So, what would have led you to leave the UNC and join the NTA?
Well, that, I mean, it's been in the media, right?
Yes.
I have had challenges with and when I say the present leadership, I mean, it's not just limited to Kamala Prasad-Bissassa, although she admits that the buck stops with her as the political leader. So for the last, it could be 2 years now, actually, after the local government election, I would have resigned as the coordinator for Digger Martin West. We did have issues where there were persons in the party who had, restraining orders against them, and I felt as though we had not taken a strong position on it. So that was closest to, I want to say, home as the Digger Martin West coordinator. So I had resigned as the coordinator. And that was, I mean, I think that's ventilated in the media quite a bit. I have spoken out, I mean, several times. I called on Mrs. Prasad-Bissassa to save her legacy, because I do think that whether it be age, whether it be other issues, I think she is being compromised at the moment. And, the Constitution of the United National Congress has not been respected.
Right.
That is something that, again, I spoke out a lot internally. And, now, well, not now, as I said, the issues with UNC has been well ventilated in the media over the last 2 years, the issue between myself and the UNC. I mean, I think very similar to senior counsel, Mr. Larry Lalla. We spoke out quite a bit, and we tried internal before finally offering resignation.
Yeah. That move, your move to the NTA, I mean, that aligns with a trend of political shifts and realignments, because we see that happening quite often currently, people, politicians switching and shifting and going to different parties. So it's not new. But do you think that this kind of signals a change in the political landscape for Trinidad and Tobago?
Honestly, it's not new. And it's not new internationally, it's not new in the Westminster system. In fact, many of the persons that you look to, throughout history, they have changed political alliances because for them and for me, and I can speak for those historically, because, it's sort of like 2020 vision, what they were about. But for me in particular, the political party cannot become bigger than the country. We cannot have more allegiance to the political party than to our country. I want to say red, white, and black. Somebody's going to say red is PNM. No, red is Trinidad and Tobago. Yes. And so red, white, and black must always be priority. It cannot be, party over country. It must be country over party. And that is what that's what governs. So, you use the word bold leadership, fearless, and I think that's what it comes down to. People talk about constitutional reform all the time. We talk about proportional representation. For me, there's this old prayer, give me the wisdom to know the difference, to accept the things I cannot change and whatnot. Yeah. The Constitution is not something that I personally can change. Can we lobby for it? Can we wish? I think people have been wishing for constitutional change since the day after independence. What we can do, though, is one, elect 41 good candidates. Forget, the party, look at the different people. So, for example, why the NTA? Well, Gary Griffith has several track records. One track record for me that is very important is his ability and his willingness and his boldness to speak up. So he is prepared to be fired for speaking up. And that's what we need. I say to people, we must be prepared to serve well, serve hard, and then go home. This way of holding on no matter what. So you're silent because you want a seat. You're silent because you don't want to get kicked out. You're silent because your ambitions have taken over, or even at the risk of your saying, well, you don't want to put the party into disrepute. So you're sitting down like it's a cult, and the only thing needed for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing, to say nothing, and to just allow it. And I think that is what the NTA brings. We are people who are not afraid to switch sides. I remember when Nicole Dyer Griffith, she was in the leadership race for COP. And I think if she had been the political leader, COP, we would not have needed NTA. COP might have been the new second party. COP might have been, the opposition today, So I think that's what you need. I think you need persons who are not so attached to their political party that the party becomes bigger than the country, and saving the parties or saving face for the party becomes bigger than doing what's right and doing the ethical thing.
Yeah. But hasn't that always worked in terms of certain parties sitting down and just kind of, not putting the party into disrepute? Your approach, the NTA's approach, is to, as I say, be loud, be bold. Isn't that something that people are going to look at as, you should probably tone it down a bit. We're not accustomed to that. How do you see yourself having some sort of victory with this particular stance that you're taking?
I'm on the ground, and what I can tell you is there is no UNC victory, and people are certainly absolutely fed up of PNM. What you can see is trends. They're clear trends. In 2010, we had something like 69%, closer to 68 point whatever percent voter turnout. That dropped in 2015 to 60-something percent. Then in 2020, it was 50-something percent. 58% or whatnot. Local government elections, even though local government elections sees a lower turnout than general elections, comparing local to local, it was the lowest voter turnout in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So what we know is that the citizens are fed up. They do not want the brand of politics. It's a different generation. That's, whether we like it or not, we are a different generation. We are not the generation where we're going to vote based on tribalism, based on some misplaced loyalty for somebody that we do not know, for a story that, quite frankly, is not true. And that's a story. That's a whole other conversation where a lot of our local history has been rewritten. We are, one, we are a generation where information is at hand.
Yes.
So you can't just tell us something at the dinner table and we buy into it because we have nothing else. You know, TTT is not the only form of information. We can research, we can fact check. I can go back and know about Albert Gomes without ever having met him. Whether or not he's in my social studies book, I can know about him and I can say, wait, this guy may be more responsible for our independence. We are a new generation of thinkers.
Yes.
We are critical thinkers. We think for ourselves. We come up with our own opinions, you know, and I think that is a good thing. I know that some of the older generation would like to put us down and put the youth down constantly, but it is good. It's good to think for yourself and to work things out for yourself. And I think that is what the country wants. Again, the Constitutional Reform Committee, it keeps coming up. People want proportional representation. So the idea of third parties serve no purpose. Third parties are your best opportunity for proportional representation inside of the lower house, because PNM and UNC, if they want, they could take, let's say, 15 seats, and then we take, you know, a 10 seats, or Hope takes a 2 seats, and there's no need for us to take our seats and give it to anybody. It can be on a per vote basis, on a per bill basis. It can be on a situation where, you know, again, and that's why you need people who are dripping with integrity, so that it's not a situation where, well, I need to vote this way, you know, because I want to keep my ministerial position, or I don't want to lose my seat, or this or that, which is also why people ask, you know, why didn't you stay quiet and go for a safe seat? First of all, this safe seat, boy, they could kick you out because they know, you know, you could get replaced in the morning. And I think that all of that is maybe why the People's Partnership didn't work, because you may have wanted a safe seat. So I see people saying, you know, why UNC don't give the third parties a safe seat? You know, the truth is that is not actually good for the third parties. What we need are seats, as I say, that can act as an independent senator, the same way an independent senator can kind of sift through and say, well, you know, I hear what the opposition is saying, I hear what the government is saying, but I think here's a middle ground, or, you know, they're not blinded, or they're not even, if we look at the Westminster system where, you know, you have to toe the party line, then that, you know, I'm not going to fall as part of that, you know. So there is that space for an independent MP, as you were. And so we do need a few good voices in there that say, well, listen, I think that this bill is a good bill, and I'm not going to vote along the party lines with it, first of all, because I'm not part of your party, but I am in the lower house. So there is a space there. Politics needs to mature, it needs to grow. And you know, the truth is, again, if you look at history, I mean, let's go back to slavery. I always ask people, if slavery were in your hands, if the determination of, you know, whether slavery was to be abolished or not, if that fight was in your hands, would we still be slaves today? Or would you have that personality? Would you have that fight to do what it takes to take a lashing and come again? And when the other slaves, because I mean, if we just put ourselves, you know, and think of what that would have looked like, you know, the slaves would have gone, dude, every time you protest, we get more work, we get more licks, we get more whatever. Could you just put your head down, stay quiet, life good? You know, it ain't perfect, but it good. Had that been the mentality, and that is what that's the one thing that I think this generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians do not remember. We just finished celebrating Carnival. People died for that freedom.
Yeah.
So we put on our beads and we think, yeah, land of the free. Somebody died for that freedom.
Yeah.
Blood was shed for that freedom. We are at a space where we are fighting for the soul of our nation. And I'm sorry, but what you need is big and bold to step and say, no, we will not let our country turn into Venezuela or turn into Haiti or somewhere where you turn back and, you know, migrants, you know, persons who migrated 20 years, 30 years ago look back and say, what happened to Trinidad?
So, Ms. Walker, what are the specific issues that you would have for the constituency of Diggle Martin? How would you treat with it differently? As you know, Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister, has historically held that constituency. How are you any different?
Well, I'm very different in that I grew up there. I did not grow up in Tobago. That's where I'm very different. I would not have been gifted a PNM safe seat. That is where I'm very different. So somebody like PNM, you are given the seat, and it's kind of like you feel as though it's a sure seat into the lower house. I could have gotten a marginal seat. Again, I could have stayed in UNC and gotten a safe seat. I was born and bred in Diggle Martin. My husband was born and bred in Diggle Martin. I can walk Snake Lane in La Puerta. I don't know if some other people even know where that is. And that is where I am different. I also think that where I am very different, and this is where I do think I am the perfect candidate for Diggle Martin West in particular. Diggle Martin West is almost like two different countries in a very small space. You can go to Big Yard, and then you can go to Bayshore, and it is two different countries, and they're walking distance from each other. So one person, Goodwood, not Goodwood Park, Goodwood Gardens, right? They struggle in particular with a flooding issue. Big Yard doesn't struggle with a flooding issue there on the hill, right? What they struggle with is no water in the taps up the hill, right? What they struggle with is the fact that even on a good day, no one cleans their garbage because you have, well, first of all, the bins are placed in the wrong spot. You know, then the garbage, it certainly just isn't sufficient because you have somewhat 300 homes on one street, you know, and then you know the main garbage is up the hill. So those at the bottom of the hill do not feel safe. If we remember, a few years ago, there was a shootout in Big Yard, very close to where the bin is, and a little girl lost her life. I mean, her blood ran down my family home's drain.
Yes.
Do you want me to walk and put my garbage up there?
Yes.
And this is, and we need representation who genuinely understands that. You know, there is a call similar to local government election where the representative was part of at least the corporation. You know, we have persons who live in Diggle Martin that have filed for Kumuto Manzanilla. We have persons who live in Diggle Martin who is the MP for Point Lisas. You know, you need to live and work and traverse and drive the streets of the place that you are representing. Because that way, when you drive past the garbage every morning, you could pick up the phone and say, hey, did you see this? Or, hey, why did CPEP leave the bags of the clippings right next to the drain? Because then rain will fall and common sense tells you the garbage is going to fall into the drain, and Goodwood Gardens has a flooding issue. So we need to keep those waterways as clean as possible, because even with impeccable maintenance, there is a flooding issue. So you can't leave the trimmings there. You can't put it in the garbage bag right next to the drain. And have you seen the rain levels? Have you seen what's going on? It's going to end up in the drain. Do you notice I don't have any notes, anything? I haven't looked down. These things at the top of my head. You know why? Because I'm there walking the ground. No one has to give me a speech and tell me somebody's name. I can call the names. I can tell you that in 2020 there was a newborn baby at the house, and there was a garbage bin with rats. That was a health and safety hazard. And there's a newborn baby in that home. You know, I can tell you, and I can call their names only because we're on air. I'm not going to call their names, but I can tell you whose wall is every rainy season at a risk of washing away into the river. I can tell you who's trying to sell their home because where's been broken into the most, and they can't get it sold because nobody wants to purchase, you know, prime property in Trinidad and Tobago. I can tell you the ones who have had it sold and they now live in the States and they can't get their foreign exchange. I can tell you whose husband is in the States trying to get their foreign exchange from the house that they sold, and he has a heart condition. And they've worked all their lives, but they cannot get their foreign exchange.
Your passion is
I
very,
can all of this because I am on the ground, genuinely caring for a better Trinidad and Tobago, and that starts with a better Diego Martin West.
Yeah, I agree. Your passion is very infectious. So we talked about the voters who are really radical for this change, and we also talked about those who will be stonewalls and will vote, as you said, tribalism. What about those who are disillusioned, the ones who are kind of sitting on the sidelines and they don't know what to do? How would you mobilize them?
Here's my first piece of advice for them. Make sure to be registered to vote, and make sure to be registered to vote in your constituency. And I can only speak again for Diego Martin West. When you walk and you go through the list, you canvass that list, what you find is that many people are still registered wherever they got their ID card at 18 years old. They're still registered there. So flooding impacts you in Diego Martin West, but you're voting in St. Anne's. Crime impacts you in Diego Martin West, but you're still voting in San Fernando. You don't have to make a decision to vote today. You have to make a decision, one, to at least be prepared to vote, which means you have to be registered in Diego Martin West. I can help you with that. My office number is 499-WALK. It's easy, 499-WALK. Notice, easy to get me, 499-WALK. We'll help you with your registration. That's one. Two is you don't have to be involved at the level that I'm involved, but here's how citizens need to be involved. Forget the noise, forget the propaganda, forget all the petty politics, bald head, small pin, and all kind of shippiness, and look at your candidate. I would even tell you, you could forget the political leader, even though it is important. I do know that it's important because that person has to become the prime minister, right? But let us start with what, it's like building the bottom up. Who is the candidate? So you have Diego Martin West. Go and find out about Hans de Veens. Who is he? What was he doing before he got this, gold spoon? Who is Marshall Walker? Who is whoever UNC puts? Who is that person? What were they doing before politics? What was their interest before politics? Is this a natural step because they've realized that politics is where that final, ultimate change needs to happen? Because let's be real, we can have all the NGOs in the world. I think Haiti probably has the most NGOs. A country that isn't working, what they need are NGOs. A country whose politicians are dripping with integrity, they don't need NGOs because the government will know their place, they will know when not to overstep, how to work, how to do policies that truly serve the people. So I think that that's what citizens need to do. Forget all the noise and go and meet with your representative. If you cannot get through to your candidate during general elections, then you think you're going to get through to them after they've won? I will also, and I want you to be fair to your candidate. It is impossible for your candidate to meet 30,000 people walking. Most times you don't come out of the house, or you're not home, or whatever. It is far easier for 30,000 people to get in contact with 499-WALK than for us to think, to be fair, that I can hunt you down, find you, and have a conversation with you. 499-WALK, have a conversation, ask hard questions, So speaking of specific journeys, how has your particular journey prepared you for a role in politics? I tell this story all the time. I wrote a children's book. So before politics, I was an advocate for conscientious parenting. So I had a parenting television show on, another channel, a column and everything. And I'd written a children's book where I told the true story of some people like Keyshawn Walcott. Because again, a lot of times people see the end results. They don't see all the hard work and stuff before. I wanted to tell that story in a children-friendly manner. And so I went to schools from Guayari to Laventille, reading the stories, and I guess that put me front and center with the condition of our education system, the physical infrastructure, the condition. I remember going into Laventille Girls Primary School, and the bathroom is facing the playground. So you open it into the playground, and the bathroom has no lights. So the girls cannot close in the door. I mean, they can't close in a door that faces into the playground and the light is blown, the bulb is blown. And that's it's just like, so you're just hoping that your friend is kind and keeps the door closed, and it's a light bulb. Then you go upstairs and there's like a massive hole in the floor, and you could just, and it's a game. We throw things down to the next class, because we don't need to walk down the step. We could just, like a bucket brigade. And then, so that led into different camps and stuff. And one day an 8-year-old girl came up to me and said, I was raped. Our law suggests that, if you say that to me, I have to take it seriously. I have to make a report. And I said to her, she was afraid of the repercussions of making the report and whatnot, or apparently the report was made. And she was going through a lot. And I said, I will not leave you alone. I will be here with you. I will walk you through this process. And I sat on many committees. I advocated, domestic abuse. I've left my house at midnight with persons calling and, jump in the car and we go and rescue a mother who is, being abused. Again, you sit on committees. I've been in I remember years ago, Faris Al-Rawi at the time would have been the Attorney General and, giving suggestions for how we could change and improve the Domestic Violence Act. And more I realized that this is where the real change happens. I could fight and walk and fight and walk, and I'm just hitting a brick wall, because judges are governed by the law, and if the law has a loophole, then or if the law doesn't accommodate for it, or all these different things. And the final buck of change, that final space is politics, is the policy makers. Those persons who go inside of Parliament must be willing to debate, and debate with an open mind, and debate with maturity, and debate with an end result of this is the best legislation to take our country forward. It's not, well, I'm opposing for opposing's sake, or I'm bringing something that I think that's going to just win a vote. It must be from a space of persons who are on the ground, who are not in an ivy tower somewhere. Because sometimes we kind of think, who made this policy? And they're made by people in a suit and tie, and no problem, I'm going to wear a suit this evening as well for our rally. But they're made by persons who don't seem to be on the ground, who do not seem to remember what they went through. Because I would say Keith Rowley didn't come. He wasn't born rich. He was not born in Goodwood Park. And you kind of think, have you forgotten what life is like?
Yeah, I completely understand. I think we actually have to come to an end. Right now we have run out of time. We do appreciate you coming on to share with us, not only your story, but everything that you shared with us. Your passion is very infectious, and I do appreciate it. So,
well, that's the point, right? Let's infect some people to come out and vote.
We definitely did have a lot more questions for you, but we do have to come to an end. But I mean, for future reference, we would love to invite you back onto the program and continue this conversation.
And you can WhatsApp the questions, somehow.
Of course. Sure. But thank you again for joining us this morning. We do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and all the best.
7 p.m. we're at NTA headquarters. The movement for change has begun. Assembly, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. today.
Yes.
Great.
And if you need a reminder,
you guys are going to be there. It's not a party thing, come in red, white, and black,
Where is this located?
At the corner of Mount Lambert Circular and Eastern Main Road. So, I mean, if you just kind of drive just after Arangwa's there's a basketball court. Just around Carib Brewery, just head towards there, and then you'll see, and it's in the car park. So you'll see Maxis, you'll see all the commotion, and you'll know, oh, this is the rally march I was talking about.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much for that. We do have to take a quick break, and we will be right back. It's Wednesday, so you'll know what that means. Stay with us.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Good morning and welcome back to AM Prime. So before we jump into our second interview of the day, remember that you can find us on YouTube or Facebook where you can leave your comments and suggestions for us to engage with you. Head to WESN CC to engage with us now, and your comments can be featured on AM Prime. Now, as we continue, we have a very amazing and heartwarming story for you today. It's a story of kindness, resilience, and creativity. It's a trip back to the old days and a look into how people chose to survive when neighbors helped and communal living and economic support reigned king. It's a story of the breadfruit. You'd be amazed what can be unlocked with this simple fruit. So today in studio, we have Mr. Raul Bermudez, author of book, The Breadfruit 3. How are you doing, Mr. Bermudez?
I'm fine, thank you. And I'm going to use what you just said in my promotional material from now on. Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Sure. Okay, so The Breadfruit 3. Where did that name come about?
For one, we toyed with many different names, but because the family is the lady and two children, a boy and a girl, we finally decided on a play of the, and people have told me, oh, you misspelled the word 3, yes? But it's part of it. The book as it exists today is only part of the story.
Yes.
And the editors thought that it was too long for a children's book, but we'll soon be publishing the full story again and start giving it away the way we plan to put it online as a free download for whoever wants it, because there's a message in it that we need to get out. We can't wait for the book to sell and for word of mouth to recommend it to others for it to sell again. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to get the message of what a breadfruit tree can do for you out to the people.
So for our audience, it's a play on words. So we have the breadfruit tree, which is what we all know, a tree for breadfruit, and then we have the breadfruit 3, so THREE.
Yeah.
So why did you have that play on words? Is it because, as far as I know, when I read the book, it's
sorry,
it's 3 people, like a family, as the main characters. Do you want to touch on that a little bit more without giving away too much of the book?
No, the book is there for everybody to see. We had tried different things, but we thought for children's sake, that's why when we had put it on for sale, the price we put on it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. Appealing to children, something.
Yeah.
And the 3, if it causes you to stop to contemplate the word.
Yeah.
And decide, oh, he got it wrong and so on. That's okay. That's enough for you to be. And you know, I walked through malls as I did with my wife yesterday, and people saw my T-shirt and recognized it.
Beautiful.
it's been a good exercise.
All right. So I kind of want to touch on the meat of the book. So do you see the story primarily as a guide to self-sufficiency, or do you see it as almost a social commentary on poverty and resilience?
It is somewhat autobiographical, yes, in that my mother widowed when she was very young, and I was the same age of the boy, 10 years old and so on. And but she widowed with 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl, so the story is very different then. But the full book, when it does come out, and it will soon, because it's in the last stages of editing, will be a blueprint that people can use to set up an industry. So far we have in the book the family taking the product to market and so on and so on. There is a beautiful underlying love story in the book, which when you finish reading this first installment, you will say, well, it's a love story, it's love of breadfruit. But no, the farmer and the mother fall in love and get married and so on. And entrepreneurship steps in, where the mother and daughter set up a restaurant in Port Mall in Scarborough. And the boy becomes me towards the end of the book, in that he starts reproducing trees, propagating trees, and giving them away in Tobago and so on.
I love the personal touch on it. So how would you say your work speaks to your inner child? I know, because I know it's a story that's dear to you. Is it healing in a way to have written that book?
That's a wonderful question, and I'll have to sit down for a week to do the kind of search. But how the book came about is that since 2015, we have been buying breadfruit trees and giving them away. In all, between Trinidad and Tobago, we've given away more than 10,000 trees. And Tobago, which I love, got 1,500 of them. And it is the effect I have seen the trees has had on the families who have received them that inspired me. Because I've seen them, oh yes, they will sell some of them in front of the houses and so on, and they'll make some product with it and sell it to neighbors and so on. But I said, well, no, you could go further with it. The first installment of the book has some aspects of that, but when you get to read the full story, which will be put in online soon, you would realize that there's much more to it. So we're doing like a blueprint, but without forcing it. And we have to tell people that yes, if you want to sell breadfruit chips, you have to get
breadfruit.
Breadfruit for starters, but you have to get packaging, you have to get labeling, you have to get sanitation permissions and so on, and you have to incorporate and whatever. So we're going to be saying that in a language a child can understand, but then the parent can step in, well, look, if we're going to go into this in a big way, let us go and look for the people this man says that we have to look for, the lawyer and the advertising agency and the print tree and so on. And it's a lovely story. And then what we're doing in the full book is that we are introducing things that are of Trinidad and Tobago, but they certainly exist in Tobago, where when the boy and the girl who sleep in the same room, they're getting older, she wants her privacy and so on. So we introduce the concept of gayap, which not everybody in the world, that's just a Caribbean thing.
I heard it, but I heard it, but what is it?
That's when the community gets together, and the owner of the house would cook a pot and whatever it is, and at times alcohol is involved, but the neighbors would come out and help build and so on. So we do that, and when there's a mention of it in the first book, where people who visit Tobago on ships go to the market, buy the chips and so on, and they're on their way up onto the boat again, and the captain sees them eating these things, inquires what it is, takes a sample, and he sends his procurement manager to order 1,000 packs every 2 weeks when they import.
Yeah.
And the young boy says yes, knowing fully well that he couldn't fulfill an order like that. So the community now, and they forms a cooperative where everybody puts in some money and they're going to buy deep fryers and slicing machines and all sorts of things. So we explained that in laced in a lovely little story.
Yes.
And of course, we're going to touch social things like drugs and so on, where the boy leaves school to go out and tend to his garden and so on, and the friends kind of tease him with it, and he says, well, come along, and some of them get hooked in the whole concept of producing food and so on.
So what this book is like a full teaching campaign for children.
I would love if the government says, well, let's get it in all the schools and so on. I don't mind. I mean,
I would love that because it helps them to touch on the initiative that they want about growing economic stability and economic support and teaching entrepreneurship. So I think that this book is a great introduction for that.
Is that when at the beginning of the book, the mother sends the boy to buy a breadfruit because she's going to make an oil down. And on his way to the market, Farmer Brown asks him, where are you going, Anthony?
Yes.
And he says, I'm all excited that he's going to do this thing. And the farmer says, but why? Because this is a thing. A breadfruit tree costs $25. If you go to the market to buy a breadfruit, it will cost you around $35 because now they sell it by the pound. So, and he says, well, why would you buy one breadfruit when you could buy a tree that can give you 200 or 300 breadfruit every year? And the idea now, his father has died, that he could contribute that to his family and so on. He buys the breadfruit tree, comes home, and the mother, of course, as mother says, and what are we to eat today?
Yes.
And so he sends him back, and the farmer gives him a breadfruit and tells him keep the tree. And the story goes along that line. We are going to do the farmer and the children's mother eventually get married, but they're going to have a Mariah wedding. And if you go to Mariah wedding is in Tobago, it's a long procession and they dance in a certain way. And one of the elements in the procession is a lady with a breadfruit on her head and breadfruit leaves running down the back. So I'm going to introduce that and explain that Wikipedia will tell you that that lady signifies purity and virginity. Neither of them are virgins anymore. But it's a nice thing that with all the procession of carrying suitcases and the head and food and baskets of fruit and so on, that they have that element of the thing. So like that, we're going to sneak in a lot for people who don't know Tobago. And I mean, I like to say that I've been to Tobago more times than I can remember or would ever want to forget, because we go all the time. Yes, my wife and I honeymoon there. And things were not as, we spent one night.
Really?
That's what we could have afforded then.
Okay.
And, but we made up for it because I don't know, Tobago has an effect on my wife, darling, that I don't know if it's the water, the food, the people, or whatever it is.
I think because of this book, Tobago has an effect on you as well.
No, definitely, because being there transforms her, and I enjoy the benefit of that. But it's a good thing. Sorry.
No, I was going to just take the conversation a little bit further into private farming. And how can you speak to the agribusiness in Trinidad and Tobago? Why is it that this particular breadfruit, but this particular industry is important to Tobago?
It's so important to Trinidad too. The beauty of breadfruit is that the food mass it produces, is such. And a breadfruit requires no fertilizing, no treatment. All you have to do is wet the blooming thing every day, yes? And eventually, after years, it will start finding its own water underground. But, and even then, the more you wet it, the more fruit it produces and so on. So, and it's that all you need is to get one tree. Whereas other things, tomatoes, I mean, if you've ever tried tomato, I've tried many times and failed miserably. To grow anything else requires more knowledge, fertilizers and so on, where a breadfruit tree, you just stick it in the ground, wet it, and wait for it to happen. And there's an interesting thing. I don't know if it's taking you other places, but
it's okay. Let's go.
I used to be, for my nieces and nephews, growing up, a good storyteller.
Yes.
And it is only when I got into writing the book, because the book was never meant to be published. I started out at a skeleton of the book, and every time we'd go to Tobago, I'll get inspired and add a little more, and I'll put the date and add little aspects of it and so on. But we read things for our children, and a lady tells me, like, wanting to make less of what I did, says, oh, it's like Jack and the Beanstalk. And I say, do you know what that story is about? I say, similar to this, in that the mother sends the boy to the market with this skinny cow, and some magician or whoever it is trades it for some magical seeds and so on. And the mother throws it out the window. The following day, this beanstalk has grown. But what happens after? The boy goes up to thief.
Yes.
Yes. And after doing that 2 or 3 times, and the giant catches wind of it, 3, 5, 4, 5, starts chasing along. What does the boy do? He takes an axe, cut the beanstalk, and does what? Kills the giant. And we read those stories for our children like nothing. Yeah?
Yes.
But it's a horrible story in itself. And actually, we do talks about that too. That over the last couple of 100 years, they have tried to sanitize that story and so on.
How can you?
There are a lot of stories. I'm carrying you other places and so on. But
this story.
It's a nice little thing.
So what I'm seeing is that this book in particular, because yes, it touches on the economic side of things and teaching children entrepreneurship and all of that, but the story is about breadfruit. So you're telling me about the importance of breadfruit. What are some of the benefits? Because I know in an article you were talking about how we can use breadfruit and how it's good for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about this powerful fruit?
The full book is going to talk about those things, because the mother and daughter set up a restaurant.
Ooh.
And the neighbors and so on, and members of the church, because we're going to talk about religion a little bit without offending anybody, start contributing recipes. And what we're going to do, while the story is being laced through the book, we're going to have little boxes that will have the recipe for oil down and so on. So as we name the aspects of it, we will be explaining the same way with the lawyer and the packaging and the labeling and so on. We're going to, with little boxes, explain that more for the parents, so be a guide for the parents and so on.
All right, so beyond breadfruit, do you see other local underutilized resources or foods that can help communities escape poverty?
There are many other things you can do. I have, you go to certain areas, because we will fill the van with 200 trees and go central, go south, go to Tobago and so on. And we've done the Tobago thing 7 times or more. And people actually, châtaigne. I said, well, champion the cause of châtaigne.
Yes.
Châtaigne is much easier than breadfruit, because châtaigne, you just put the seed, it grows, and you have a tree. Breadfruit is a little more involved, and part of the book is going to talk about the 5 different methods of propagating breadfruit, and we're going to concentrate on the one that we use here the most, which is air layering. Air layering is when you take the branch, you shave the bark, you put moss, and in 4 to 6 weeks, it has sprung roots. You could cut it and plant it, and you have a breadfruit tree. And reproducing the tree is difficult. The price of the tree at Centeno, which is where we buy them, is ridiculous. Yes, when you see that the breadfruit tree is costing you less than a breadfruit, yes, how could you say no to that?
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me saying, in this climate we're in, I like to remind politicians who have not picked up on this thing. I mean, I'm I'm feeding the people. You should be feeding the people too.
Well.
Is that I'd like to remind them that a breadfruit tree costs less than a T-shirt. Yes? This T-shirt you see me with costs $60 or more. Yes? Whereas a breadfruit tree is $25, you know.
Wow, yeah.
How could you? So I tell people, when they come to your gate, ask them for your breadfruit tree. Yes? Whatever.
So you've actually championed a cause where you, and how many? You said 10,000?
10,000.
Bread.
That 10,000 for a population our size is
Yes,
nothing.
is that...
But we do not produce, I don't produce them myself. I buy them from the Ministry of Agriculture's outlet in Centeno. And as fast as they produce them, I buy them and I give them away. Yes? Because if you know where Centeno is, darling, you have to make a sandwich to go there because it's a long drive. So somebody from deep south will never come, because if you don't have your own vehicle and you have to hire a taxi to take you, that tree will cost you a couple of $100. Yes, and we either need to create outlets throughout the country where people could go and buy it for that price, or the government has to say it. And so, darling, it has been difficult. I have offered the 41 members of parliament to set up a breadfruit forest, which is 105 trees that I would supply, I would plant, I will get somebody to wet, yes? And I'll offer them that, yes? There have been no takers.
None.
Yeah, because they're simply not interested. I think our politicians like to have people still cap in hand,
begging out of the palm of their hands. I do think that this is a good initiative, especially because I was going to ask, how did you think that we can implement this into our economy, into our society? How do you propose policymakers utilize breadfruit? And you just said it, a breadfruit forest. How long will that take to set up? What does that entail?
Just to plant 105 trees. It's 2.5 acres of land, which I tell people, you find the 2.5 acres of land, give me permission to go and plant, and then I don't need to own it. Yes. But it has to be close to where the population is, so people could go and pick the. When you go up the islands, St. Lucia and Grenada, I've been to St. Lucia and some of the other islands, but my children who travel the islands often say, Daddy, there's a breadfruit tree in nearly every yard. Yes. And in St. Lucia, the experience I've had is that people would park on the side of the road, trees that are planted on nobody's land, they'll just pick a couple of breadfruit and put it in a car to go home and so on. We need to, Barbados has started planting breadfruit trees on their highways, yes, for anybody to pick and carry home, yes, and it's...
At first I argued that people may not want to do that because it might be too tedious, but if you're saying other Caribbean countries are doing that as well, why do you think it's taken us so long? Oh, we're not even doing it.
You want to know where this idea was born? I was listening to the radio a day, and the Prime Minister, having won the election 10 years ago, comes up on his radio station, and he spoke for 5 hours about every imaginable thing. And one of the things he touched on was the food import bill. And he said words that you in this industry, you would have heard him repeat many times. We need to educate the taste buds of the children using a school feeding program. Let's get them to learn and love what we can grow here. And he said that, this week I was invited to lunch. You know what the menu was? And of course they couldn't guess. He says, breadfruit and peas. And I haven't had a delicious meal like that in the longest time. We at home would buy breadfruit, cook it, eat it, and that was the end of that. I Googled breadfruit to find out what a wondrous food it is. Yes? And the following day I went and bought a breadfruit tree. And I wrote the Prime Minister a letter. He's not my friend, but what it is, but I sent him a letter saying, dear sir, when in 5 years' time you go with the people who put you in office and ask them to keep you there, if their lives have not changed in any other way other than the fact that by then, 5 years, they'll be eating from a breadfruit tree you gave them. Yes? And a breadfruit tree takes 3 years to start producing, so the trees will be well established by then. And I went on to explain, I said, how much more expensive would an NHA house be if it had a breadfruit tree in the backyard? And the idea is that when architects come and divide up a plot of land where they're going to put 100 houses, you send somebody, you know where the house is going to be, to plant the tree in the backyard. Some may not want it and cut it down when they get there, but most are going to, they would have fruit in it already, are going to keep it and so on. And the same way, I said, in the communities like Orupun, you have open spaces. Plant trees there so the people who live in the buildings can go, you know, a mother can send a child pick to breadfruit. But to plant breadfruit trees in public areas in this country is impossible. Yes. Or CPEP would cut them down, whether they're told to cut them down or not, yes. And you ask for permission to plant, and they're simply not interested in having you do it.
That is very, very, very
sad.
unfortunate.
It's sad.
I think not just the fact that it's nothing that we have in policy to be able to protect this, but also our social attitudes and stuff like this. It's very poor. It's very, very poor. I don't think we have a mindset of, I think we're shifting towards it, entrepreneurship, especially using agribusiness, but I don't think we're there yet.
You know, one of the stories I like to give, and I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time, is that there was a tree growing in my mother's apartment. It was touching the roof, and I wanted a special place to plant it.
Yes.
So I asked friends at the city corporation if we could plant it in Woodward Square. And the initial response was, yes, great idea. We had a meeting. The person calls me back and says, oh, Rahul, they have decided that it would cause undesirables, yes, to pick the poor black people. Is how I interpreted that. And I said, but that's silly. I mean, as far as I know, because I used to go to Parliament all the time and also always walk through Woodford Square, I said, for as long as I know myself, people have been making pigeon soup in milk tins in the square for the longest while. If they add breadfruit to it now...
Just makes it more hearty.
yeah. And so, yes. But coincidentally, a month before, there was a Venezuelan couple sitting on one of the benches in the square. Yes. And a branch fell and caused the woman to be hospitalized. He got her to the hospital. I said, look, because one of the fear was that breadfruit could fall on somebody and hurt them. I said, I'd rather breadfruit falls on me and I can take it home and cook it than to have a tree fall on me, yes, and kill me. So they find every excuse not to let you plant in public places and so on. It's been horrible. And I've planted in schools, and the CPAP crews would come and destroy the trees and so on. It's been... So what we opted by doing is one per family. Yes, a family would take care of its own tree for its own purposes and so on.
So how can people get involved with helping you with this initiative, giving away
Honestly,
trees?
I don't need any help.
Really?
It's nothing. You just drive around and you give out the trees. And a beautiful story in Tobago at a time. My wife and I would be driving around in a van we have. And when I see people tending to the garden, I'll call out to them, do you want a breadfruit tree? And timidly they will say no, because I figure you have something to sell.
Yes.
I say, it's free. So then they will come. And this particular man comes to collect his tree, says, wait. Runs in his house and brings me the most gorgeous zabuka. You can imagine. Wonderful. I said, this poor man doesn't know that zabuka more expensive than what I gave him. But that is the nature of our people, yes? And,
so we have it in us. We have it in us for this community support. We just need the policymakers to kind of get behind us and help people.
Like our Ministry of Agriculture, let me refer to our outgoing Minister of Agriculture. Hopefully they come up with something better. He has... I said, sir, all you have to do is ask them to produce more. Because the more they produce, the more I'll buy and more give away. I mean, the small amount that they produce is enough. You say, how can other people get involved? For one, we don't take donations. It's something I comfortably do out of my own pocket. And there isn't enough to say, well, for one, I don't want to have to hire anybody, yes, because I'd rather spend the money on trees than salaries and so on. And I can continue doing, at the rate they produce the trees, comfortably doing it on my own.
But I do see this initiative as one that needs a certain level of awareness for people to know what's going on. So do you have a social media or just something?
Oh, yeah, I'm busy on Facebook and so on. I mean, I haven't given an interview like this. We got a lovely write-up in a newspaper last weekend. And that just sort of happened, but I don't go looking for those things because my wife tells me, "Raul, you're famous enough." Yeah. And the whole thing is, if people know, and there's like contact information on the last page of the book, that they can drive by, blow the horn, and get a breadfruit tree. Yes, and not have to wait for me to bring it to your community and so on. And we are kept busy with that, you know.
Do you go into all communities, so how can people come to get breadfruit from you?
All they have to do is come to my address, blow the horn, ring the bell, and somebody comes out and gives them a tree.
And they can find all of this information online, or would you like to?
It's all online.
All online.
All online.
So I know we have to wrap shortly, but I wanted to show you that it's not just, the book comes in 3 forms, guys. So we have the actual, the first part of the story, it's the full-size book. And then there's a coloring book as well for children. And then I believe there's a mini book.
Yeah, I think you have one somewhere there.
Yes, I don't know if I have it on me. But yes, a mini flip book as well, right? And we have the book up on the screen for you to see. Various pictures were showing throughout the interview. And I actually just wanted to give a little read of the first part of the story. I'll just read about 2-3 pages. And I really do hope that you guys enjoy. So this is The Breadfruit 3 by Raul Bermudez.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
If you go to my Facebook page, you will see one of my grandchildren reading the full book. Yes, at an event Alta had 2 Sundays ago. They wanted me to read, and I get very emotional just thinking about it. And so they allowed him to read and so on. And so if you wanted to hear the story today, you could just go to our Facebook page.
What is that Facebook page?
Breadfruittrees.com.
Breadfruittrees.com.
It will take you to...
So the website is breadfruittrees.com, and once you go there, you can find all the information.
It takes you to Facebook, and Facebook has all those things happening there.
All right, that's beautiful. So I'm gonna give you a little tease, and then you can head to the Facebook to hear the full story read by his beautiful
grandson.
Grandson. Okay. So it was another peaceful Sunday in the village of Providence. Evelyn Peters, a young widow,